high hurricane force winds that swept through the community. The injuries do not appear life-threatening, but the ages of the two are 76 for female, 80 for the male. They are awake. The husband is in a lot of pain in the head and neck area. The female is shaking a lot, cause unknown. So what's your thoughts here, folks?
Females in shock.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a good possibility. Let's see, we said
And he's unresponsive?
they're both awake. The husband's in a lot of pain in the head and neck area. So what's that possibility?
Stabilizing
So
that.
we might have a spinal injury, correct? And your wife or the female is shaking a lot, cause unknown, and you are saying possibly shock, okay? So I haven't looked it up yet, but it's in here. Somebody wrote down it's on pages 9 and 12 in the book. So if we want to look in here and see what's on 9.
Back injuries and seizures and convulsions.
Okay, number 9 is head, neck, and back injuries, and that would be the husband, right? That's on page 9. And 12 was seizures and convulsions. So it is possible with all the shaking going on from the female, she may be having a seizure. It's possible. Or it could be that she is experiencing some shock. So there's several different things here that we could be looking at. She may be just totally frightened. You know, so there's she might be cold. I mean, there's a lot of different possibilities here. So
Does it say what number scenario it is? No. Yeah.
We've got a master key. Again, it's 9 and 12, where the two that were pointing, in your book. If you go to
Yeah,
page
but what
9,
I'm asking is, was it number 1, number 2, number 3,
that
number?
was scenario number 1.
Number 1.
So that'd be the first table over
Okay,
here.
and he was, okay.
Again, he was
He was
80,
laying
she
on
was
the floor.
76, right.
Complaining about his dog.
And she was sitting in the chair, doing nothing. She was a neighbor, she said?
Well, the neighbor may have been there, but they were there to be able to offer a key to the house. If the house, you had to look at what the condition of the
Yeah.
house was, whether or not the doors were all locked and you can't get in the door, what do you do
And
with
did
that?
they have the key, one of
But
them?
all we're dealing with is just a scenario
Okay.
as far as the medical issues.
Okay.
And this one points to page 9 and 12.
Yes, and he would kept trying to move his head, and I kept trying to hold it still.
okay, scenario number 2, power out in the home and electrical panel has been blown out. Bare wires are emitting sparks. The husband is on the floor and unresponsive, possibly from electrical shock. He is 65. The wife is okay, but suffering from the sight of her unresponsive and unconscious husband laying on the floor. She is known to have heart issues and is 60 years old. What do we think is happening here? What should we be looking for? Which one is the priority patient, first of all? The one that's unresponsive, right? So that automatically says we've got to have help coming. We need 911. So that's the first thing.
Is he breathing?
Well, that'd be the next thing we would need to check out. Okay, but if we're gonna triage patients, we're gonna sort them out. He's the guy that's gonna get our first attention, right? Would you agree?
Yes.
So then, once we figure out what's happening with him and we treat him accordingly, since he is unresponsive, where do you turn to in the book for that? 19, right? Because it's unconscious or unresponsive. And that'll tell you what steps to take next.
Check for breathing.
And then it's also here, it's saying page 6, which apparently is a breathing emergency.
Breathing emergencies.
Where are we seeing the breathing?
The wife was having.
Wife is
pain
okay
in her
but suffering
chest.
from the sight of her laying.
Well,
she's-
no, the scenario didn't say that. It
Well,
says,
she did.
she is known to have heart issues and she is 60. But there's no report that she's having any issues.
Okay.
Just keep in mind, people were trying to play active, so,
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
The main thing would be to calm her down.
yeah, comfort her.
And don't allow her to interfere with your treatment of the husband,
Right.
because oftentimes that'll happen.
And a lot of these things, like we're talking about if something happened in this area where there was a major whatever.
Right.
And 911 is probably not gonna be responsive. So what we need to do is somehow get in touch with the medical people who we have here, who can do something better than people who know nothing.
Yep.
And how do we do that, everybody? Send a runner to the stationary radio.
Or have a paramedic course here and have everybody trained.
There you
There
go.
you go.
I want to take one step back. When I first heard you speak, you said that safety comes first.
Absolutely.
If I'm coming into a home that has been damaged, the roof is off, the hurricane has come through, there's water on the floor, the sparks shooting out of the box.
Yep.
Am I going in?
I'm not. I'm not gonna.
Gary, for
Yes.
this, today, we're just talking about the medical part of it, but you're absolutely right. We wouldn't even enter that building because it's not safe for us. But the scenarios that Bill's going over are just the medical part of it. We're not looking at what happens in the hospital.
We are at this point, we are going to address those kind of questions, further down the road, Gary. Just give us some time, we got a lot to work through.
I guess the assumption at this point is that we've disposed of all of those safety concerns and now we're able to work with the patients, so what do we do at this point? The rest of it is kind of superfluous. In the way I'm reading it.
We're working on getting some people to come in and talk to us about those kinds of things, gas safety, electrical safety.
Yep.
Right. Gonna try to get in touch with, Seco
Seco and the
Seco
city
Energy to come talk to us about that, City of Leesburg for the gas issues. So we're
Hopefully
working to
it's
put
August
together
meeting is what we're trying for.
good education for us all.
Is Duke's different than?
No, we just picked one, and since Duke went out and Seco didn't, we figured we'd talk to Seco.
All right, I think we're gonna go over to number 4 now.
Yes.
2 people, male and female, are trapped in the driveway. A large tree has crushed the car. One person is complaining of severe leg pain. The other one is unresponsive. Who's your priority?
Unresponsive.
Absolutely. We may be doing CPR here, correct?
Might be.
Possible. So even though she has severe leg pain, unless it's like a really, really nasty bleed, our first priority is gonna be our unresponsive patient. Okay. So that's again on pages 5 and 19. So 5 was bone, joint, and soft tissue injuries, and 19 was unresponsive. Number 5, found 2 people wandering around Meandering Trail Boulevard in a common area off the social hall area, and you immediately recruited them to help, correct? They appear to be in shock. What made you think that? What were some of the signs of shock?
They didn't know where they were.
There you go, confusion, yeah. They do not know where they live. So, in this case, since the answer is pretty much given to us, they appear to be in shock, we're gonna go right to page 14, which is our shock page. And I see 6 is crossed off, so are we moving to 7, Brian?
Please.
The front door to the home at lot 646 is locked, and the back door is also locked, and the house is without power. No way to get in. Inside, we can hear a woman's voice calling for help. Yelling back gets a response. She says she hurts all over and she cannot find her husband. She yells that her husband has had a stroke in the past and has high blood pressure. What do you do and what do you need to determine the status of the residents and get help for them? Yeah, for them, I assume. What are you thinking, folks?
First, you check with the neighbor to see if they
Get
have
the
a
key.
key.
Gotta get
Okay.
in the house first.
All right, so if we gain access,
Right.
and we're now at the patients, with the patients, how do we want to go about attacking this?
Well, we wanna search for the husband.
She yells that her husband has had a stroke in the past and has high blood pressure, but she doesn't know where he is.
So we search the house for the husband.
Okay, so let's find him.
Yep.
And see what's wrong with him.
Yep. And in the meantime, she's saying that she hurts all over.
not so much, we're gonna probably focus on her first. I would say that, check to see whether or not her husband now has had another stroke.
Mhm.
I think he would become the primary,
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
I said, we look for him first.
so 12, I think.
So 9, 12, and 16 are the pages. 9 is head, neck, and back.
Seizures and convulsions or.
12, yeah, head, neck, and back because they had, oh, she hurts all over, okay. We don't know why, but 12 was seizures and convulsions.
And 16 is stroke.
Okay.
Okay,
Everybody agree with that? No? Go ahead.
I just wanna say for the woman who says I hurt all over, I mean, a lot of it's just talking, right? You talk to her and say, what hurts the worst? Tell me what's the worst.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
Have a conversation and have her help out.
You have to remember, every time that you approach a patient, you have absolutely no idea what's going on. So your basis of information is this wide, right? And your job as a rescuer is you have to narrow it down, till you have something that you can treat. You have to keep asking questions, checking for this, find out what's, even if it's with a bystander. You know, what did you see, what happened here? Because maybe the person's unresponsive. But you've got to take that and narrow it down till you get to a point where it could be this or it could be that. I'm gonna treat for this. Because if you don't narrow it down, you have, okay, let's start at page 3 and then we'll try 4 and then we'll, you know, that's where you're gonna be. So we've got to really narrow it down till we can say, it's probably either 8 or it's 12.
But the obvious thing is to talk to her, right?
Oh, absolutely. I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. And that's why I'm saying, when you first walk in and you don't know what's going on, your range of information is way out to here. So by talking with her, you say, are you bleeding, as an example? Well, no, I'm not bleeding. Okay, so now your information is this much. Are you breathing okay? Yeah, I'm breathing okay. Okay, now so it's not those things. I don't have to worry about it. You have to keep narrowing it down till you get to the point where you say, gee, it's probably this. So I'm gonna treat for that.
Maybe she didn't take her meds yet.
Maybe she didn't take her meds yet.
And I get to the end and I hurt all over because it's an emotional response.
You got it. Exactly right. And if you can't identify what you're treating, then how do you know how to treat? That's the point. You've got to identify what it is that you can treat before you can start treatment. Okay? All right, let's see. We are on number 8. It is pouring down rain and lot 225 has a man yelling for help. He says his right arm hurts really bad and is hard to bend. He is wheelchair bound and cannot get to the door. What are you looking for in terms of assisting this person? And a window appears to be open.
This
Way in.
Yeah, and a window appears to be open, so we found a way in.
Not in.
Now we're with the patient. What do we want to do for this dude?
He had dislocated or torn
Right arm.
shoulder or something.
Yeah, his
Arm really hurts.
Yeah.
arm really hurts bad.
Hard to bend.
And he
Okay.
couldn't
So
move
it
it.
should be the joint.
So it could be because we don't have an x-ray machine or x-ray vision, it could be a bone, joint, or soft tissue injury, correct? Because he can't bend it,
So
well,
tell him
something's
not to
wrong
do it.
there. So we
Not
can
by
look
us.
at page 5, and we can follow those, and basically, just off the top of your head, you're gonna try to stabilize it, correct?
Yeah.
And then you're gonna put ice packs on it, or cold packs, because that's about all we can do.
Yeah.
And we wait for the professionals to show up to do the splinting and slings and all that stuff that has to be done. But our response is, let's manually stabilize it so it's not moving freely, and let's get some ice on it to try to minimize the pain and reduce the swelling, okay? Next, there's no phone service and you happen upon an individual who was walking home in a torrential downpour. He's around 80 years old and exhausted and soaking wet and cold and shivering uncontrollably. What do you need to do?
Get him somewhere.
Let's get him warmed up.
Right more.
Yeah, let's get him warmed up, all right? First aid, page 10 says heat emergency, so it's actually gonna be the reverse.
Yeah.
Okay, it's gonna be reversed. In this case, we wanna get the wet and cold clothes off of him, get him covered up with something warm and dry, get him out of the elements, obviously, as fast as possible. Shivering is a good thing, folks. Shivering is a good thing. It's when you stop shivering, it gets really, really dangerous. That's when you get into the realm of hypothermia. So if the patient is shivering, be thankful, because if they've moved beyond that, now it's really critical. Okay? So if they're shivering, that's a good thing. Any questions on that one?
Well, I have no other question. With
Shoot.
dementia, you know, a person, if you come up to a person that's got dementia, they're lost and they're confused.
Yeah.
Would you, I guess, have the communication first to find out where their state of mind is?
Well, the first thing we want to do is we want to protect them. And the way that we protect them is get them out of the elements. Okay, let's get them out of that rain and that wind and that cold. Let's get them in someplace that's sheltered. Let's get the wet clothes off them that are cold. Let's get him wrapped up with something that's dry and warm and get him warmed up. And maybe, once he's warmed up, he'll start behaving normally. But maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe he is a victim of dementia. But the first priority is we've got to get him out of we've got to warm him up.
The elements in the
Okay?
Okay, did we?
And then we'll deal with the dementia aspect of it afterward. But let's deal with the most important thing first. Yeah.
Do we take them home? She doesn't know or he doesn't know his address.
You do what you have to do to
Bring
get.
them down here?
You do whatever you have to do to get them out of the elements. I don't care where you take them, but get them out of the elements.
If we have the space, you could bring him here.
To see if he's got any ID on him.
The most important thing from a medical standpoint is get them out of the elements and try to get them. And it doesn't matter where it is. I mean, that's what you guys have to decide. But from a medical perspective, which is what I'm dealing from, you gotta get them warmed up. That's really all we care about. We don't care how you do it, but you gotta get them warmed up. Any other questions?
I guess you take them home.
Well, you might.
Well, you might see if you can figure.
Do they have any
Or you might bring them down
blankets
here.
in those-
You have to
in
make
those
that
med
call.
kits? Or is it?
It's not gonna be something that's set in stone in the
Number 11.
Dry clothes.
As you are going door to door in your assigned area, someone is calling for help. They are apparently in the garage. The person says they are in the car and trapped there from debris that has fallen from the storage area over the garage. There's no power and the garage door opener is laying on top of the car. What next, and what questions do you ask of them, and what do you say to them? Are you injured? The reply is yes. Okay, now that we get into the medical part, we know we've got an injury. The wife says she is bleeding and the husband's unresponsive. Okay, how badly is she bleeding? Because that could dictate your triage.
And she said her head or something,
Okay.
and I told her to put a pad or whatever she
If it-
had against it.
If it's not life-threatening bleeding, then maybe your unresponsive victim is your top priority.
Right.
Okay, because we don't know why he's unresponsive. Maybe he's not breathing.
You need to gain access though to the garage.
Well, I think that we're assuming that we're in there with the patients now. So we're looking at it from, we're looking at it from the
Get
medical.
in now.
Yeah, this one we couldn't get in,
We
so.
couldn't get
okay.
in.
No, but we're just
So then you
looking at the
just call
medical
911 for.
Yeah, what we're really dealing with here is if we could get to these patients, what are we gonna do? How are we gonna handle it?
Unresponsive.
So we've got marked on here 4, 6, 9, 12, 14, and 19.
Pretty much we're at this point.
So number 4 is for bleeding, because she said she was bleeding, right?
Right.
6 is breathing emergency. Well, I don't know.
We don't know.
We don't know who's bleeding or breathing. Number 9, head, neck, and back.
We don't know.
Could be.
And 12 is seizures and convulsions.
Yeah, don't know.
We don't know about that
In
either.
fact, 12 twice.
14, shock.
We don't know that
No,
either.
because that was-
Until we can look at symptoms, you know, what were some of the things, symptoms of shock?
Um,
Restless, confusion, anxiety, right?
And if he's
They were cool and moist skin.
Right.
Okay, those are all symptoms of shock. Well, we don't know from this if that was in there or not. And 19 was unresponsive, so we definitely knew, we have to look at that page for the husband, because he was definitely unresponsive. Okay, number 12, a car has driven off Meandering Trail Boulevard into Otter Pond. Appears to be only one individual in the car, but we have not investigated fully. The driver is not responding to knocks on the driver's side door. We do not know what to do at this point. We need help in getting her out or getting the car out. So, I guess, assuming that we gain entry, then what do you think we would be looking at from a first aid perspective? Okay, because she did not respond to knocks on the driver's door, so she's apparently unconscious or unresponsive. So definitely page 19.
What about if you able to get at her, and she might have a neck injury?
Yep. So now we're gonna be, and it's, we already know just from the virtue of the scenario that this was a trauma event.
Right.
Because she ran off the road and into the pond. That's trauma. Trauma is what causes head, back, and neck injuries. So we already suspect, we know it's trauma, so we can suspect maybe there's a head, back, or neck injury here because there was trauma involved. So good observation.
But, I mean, I don't know how deep that is.
We don't either.
Would you just have to wait till
Because we don't
somebody
wanna
can pull
move
the
her.
car
Have to
out?
fight off, yeah.
Because how could you?
Well, if you can gain access to the car, you know, and I don't know if you can or not. If you can gain access to the car and you can get in there, well then, I mean, I've stabilized patients from the back seat. I just reach up and hold onto the head.
You know, I don't know how deep it is.
Well, we don't,
We don't know.
it doesn't say.
Oh, it doesn't.
You'll
No,
know
it
when
doesn't.
you get in the water.
It doesn't mention.
You will know when you get in the water how deep it is there.
We just, for the purposes of the first aid part of it, we have to assume that we have access to the patient.
Okay, so that would be the first thing.
We just automatically have to assume that we were able to gain access somehow, either in the car or out of the car. We have to assume that we were able to get to the patient. Otherwise, we're not gonna be able to do any first aid, right?
That's right.
So I think a bunch of these scenarios though are, the physical environment is really compromised. And the possibility of a head or neck or spine injury is there too.
Yep.
How do you move somebody if the ceiling's about to cave in? Or-
The only time that you move someone is if not moving them puts them in greater danger.
Well, that's what I'm saying, if the ceiling is about to cave in.
If you think it's gonna cause more harm to them, then you've gotta take the risk. You've gotta take the risk and you've gotta move them.
If the car's smoking.
But then again, our safety is supposed to come first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
You have to make that
Our
determination.
safety is supposed to come first.
Correct.
So
Yeah, our safety
if
is first.
the roof is coming down on you, I probably still would try to move somebody.
Yeah.
You know.
We know that we have to get out of there, so is it possible that we bring the patient with us? That's the question we have. If we can't bring the patient with us, then the first thing we have to do is save ourselves. As hard a decision as that may be,
Yeah,
that's the priority that you've gotta take.
So she's in the car, do we just get in and stabilize her head until that 911 comes?
If you can gain access to the patient, and you know that there was a possibility, you know it's trauma because they ran off the road. So if it's trauma and you can gain access to the patient, especially if they're not responsive, then yes, you wanna manually stabilize the head and neck. Yeah.
You do that.
And then they're gonna put
Okay, I'll do that.
they're gonna put a cervical collar on them. And you know, when the professionals get there, they'll put a cervical collar on them. Okay, so I guess we passed 14 and 15 and 16.
Yep. Fast forward.
17, there is reported smoke coming from the house located on lot 396. Knocking on the door gets no response. Now what? When you determine more, what is your next step? You find a person, okay. So let's assume that we got past all of that. You find a person lying face down in the backyard. Okay, so that's where we're gonna start,
Okay.
okay? You find a person laying face down in the backyard, so what would you do first? Let's see if they're responsive,
Yeah.
right?
That's
So
it.
when we get up to them laying on the ground, are you okay, are you okay? And we're gonna find out if they respond at all. What is a response? What do you call a response?
Verbal response?
Anything. If you shake them and they move, if you shake them and they moan, that's a response. If they do absolutely nothing, guess what? They're unresponsive.
And then you go CPR.
Now we go to 19, right?
Yep.
We automatically go to 19. So the first thing to do is find out if they're responsive. If they're responsive, then we can go from what we have to work with. Can they talk to us? You know, maybe they can describe what the problem is now. If they're not responsive, then we have to go to 19. If they can respond to us and we can get some information, that'll dictate if we go to any other page. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So now pass 18, 19, and 20,
That's it.
all done. Any questions? Any questions at all?
That would be Carl and Gary put all the scenarios in
Well, then
together
Gary and Mark.
for the benefit.
All right, we're gonna be back, I'm gonna be back on Thursday night. 6, same time?
Yes.
6:30. 6:30.
6:30, okay.
Yeah, that's what it says.
I might be here early.
Better than me, I was late.
Same here.
Okay, do you folks have any questions for me before we call it a night?
What's the summary of Thursday?
Okay, Thursday night, what I've been asked to do is teach the full-blown first aid course for American Safety and Health Institute. All right, here's the deal. It's the same thing that we did with CPR. If you want a card, a certification card, which is good for 2 years, the agency charges $10. So if you want a card, bring your $10, we'll get your name on the list, we'll get a card for you. If you don't want a card, that's fine. There's no charges whatsoever. But it'll be a first aid course. It's not a first responder course. It's not a certificated course, but it'll give you a card for 2
Is it
years.
his?
But
Okay.
you would, it will, it's gonna be, again, depending on how many questions we have and everything else, we're looking at about the same time frame. Okay? But it'll be more in depth than what we talked about tonight because it's gonna be, more detail, a lot more detail. And it'll be talking about some things, not because we're ever gonna confront them, but it's part of the course, like, marine animal injuries. Okay, we'll show you what you're supposed to do, but.
The alligators, is that how we help people?
You know, I gotta go back through that and see if there's anything about alligators.
Punch him in the nose.
I think there was something with animal bites, so. Anyway, that's what we're doing on Thursday night, so hopefully everybody will be back and we'll go from there. So thanks for coming tonight.
Thank you. Thank you very much.